Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live webinar in celebration of International Women's Day and Women's History Month. My name is Vanessa Lawson. I'm the Senior Content Manager at Just Eat for Business, and I will be hosting today's panel discussion on this year's International Women's Day theme, which is Break the Bias. So why is this important? Well, I'm sure if you're watching, you're at least somewhat aware of International Women's Day or Women's History Month. It is an annual event where we celebrate the economic, cultural, political, and social achievements of women across the globe. And this year's theme is Break the Bias, as I said, and it aims to address and break down the barriers that women face in their day-to-day lives, as well as encourage people to take action to achieve gender parity. So a very important and topical theme for many of us here today. But obviously, it's not just me you'll be hearing from. I am joined by a wonderful panel of guests and experts from the hospitality industry today. First things first, unfortunately, Lungi from Treats Club was unable to join us last minute, so I apologize she's not here. But do not worry, because we have three powerhouse female business owners joining our panel today. First up, we're joined by Sylvia Garvin, founder of Seduced. Next is Justina Novitska, founder of Kid Bay Parties. And finally, we have Surya Gadkari, founder of Oh My Dal. So welcome, ladies. Now, I will pass over to each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your businesses. So Sylvia, why don't we start with you?
Great, thank you so much, Vanessa. So my name is Sylvia Garvin. I'm the founder of Seduced. Seduced is a company specializing in creating bespoke drinks for businesses. Essentially what we do is we create limited edition, unique refreshments that blend with our clients' brands, and that is in the form of pop-up bars at events serving freshly made juices, smoothies that are customized to our clients' marketing message in the sense of the bar graphics. Everything can be customized to that particular occasion. The second aspect of what we do is we create limited edition handmade bottled juices and smoothies, which we make in our kitchen, and they are completely tailored to the occasion. So finished with a personalized label in a signature flavor that captures the client's brand. And then for a steady supply of juices and smoothies, we have an award-winning eco-friendly drinks delivery service called the Juice Round, which is a service to offices and also retailers in returnable, reusable glass bottles. So like a milk round, but fruitier. So that's the three aspects of what we do.
Amazing. Thank you, Sylvia. And Justina, how about you introduce yourself? Ooh, Justine, I think you might be on mute.
Yep, I'm here. Hi, my name is Justina, and I'm the founder of Kid Bay Parties. I started the business in 2019 as a mother of two lovely little boys, with the objective to redefine the quality of children party food and offer a beautiful and, most of all, healthy alternative to what I have been personally seeing being delivered to children. As you can imagine, Just Eat for Business is nothing to do with children parties. However, I have, through my work and through working with children and families, I have evolved the business. And now, beside the children party food, I also offer lavish grazing platters and single person grazing boxes, as well as create with my wonderful team stunning grazing tables, which some of the businesses within the Just Eat for Business platform have been able to enjoy over the last couple of years that we've been working together. That's
amazing.
Me.
Yes, I know we have a lot of people in the office who love those grazing platters as well. And then Surya, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi. So yes, I'm Surya. Firstly, thanks for inviting me to be part of this roundtable. It's really nice to be amongst all these ladies. So yeah, I'm the founder of Oh My Dal, which I started just over a year ago, and we serve healthy Indian food. So think of it as an Indian Buddha bowl or an Indian poke bowl, where you choose lots of different things that together makes a really balanced, nourished, home style meal. So the way I created it was thinking of what would make the perfect lunch or dinner, whether you're at your desk, you've just come home from work and you don't have time to cook. So the focus is on health, but also taste. So all the food that we're sharing at the moment, all the recipes, they are all based on things I grew up eating. So predominantly my mum's recipes. And it was really the main reason I set Oh My Dal up, because I just felt that there's so much Indian food out there, especially in a city like London, but you don't really get to eat the kind of food I ate growing up, which is home food. It's simple and just naturally really, really healthy. So it's been really fun sharing that with everyone. So at the moment we operate from Shoreditch. So we have a kitchen in East London, and we are predominantly takeaway and collection. So we're on all the usual platforms, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and so on, Just Eat. And of course, we are also doing corporate orders, so getting food into offices with platforms like Just Eat for Business.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for those introductions. So just a reminder for everyone joining us live on YouTube, we will be doing a quickfire Q&A towards the end of the event. So please feel free to ask any questions you have for any of our guests or all of our guests in the live chat box or on social media. The handles are at Just Eat for Business across all of the platforms. So before we jump into the panel discussion, I think it is important to set the scene a little. So the phrase, a woman's place is in the kitchen. So this is a long played out stereotype that I am sure a lot of us are familiar with, whether directly or indirectly. But when it comes to the professional kitchen, it has traditionally been a very male-dominated sector. And while progress has been made to get more gender parity in the industry in recent years, there is always more that can be done with regards to representation. So with that in mind, I will kick off this discussion with this. What does this year's International Women's Day slogan, Break the Bias, mean to you, and why is it important? So Surya, I'll ask you to maybe start us off. Why is Break the Bias as a slogan or the event itself important?
Sure. So my background previously to Oh My Dal was not food. So I had no experience with the food industry. And exactly as you said, it's so heavily male dominated. And me coming in without knowing didn't really realize that. So I guess we all have this conception that it's our mums and our aunties and our grandmothers that have been the main cooks growing up in our lives. So it was actually quite puzzling to see, kitchens just full of men. And it's interesting because when you're faced with that, you almost don't question it. You say, okay, well, that's normal. It's only since I've really worked on Oh My Dal that I've really realized how male dominated it is. So break the bias for me means a few things. One is just to be aware of that and realize that through my experience at Oh My Dal, where we've got lots of girls in the team, these biases are actually when you break them, you realize there was no need for them in the first place. The girls do fantastically well in our kitchen. I was at the kitchen this morning. It just happened to be that it was all girls in the kitchen and it was great. That's not to say that the guys in our team aren't brilliant as well, but so getting more girls in our team, encouraging them, making them aware that they are at the moment a minority and they're kind of showing the way that girls can really do well in the kitchen. But I think break the bias goes beyond that. So gender is probably a good place to start. But when I look around our team, we're so diverse. If I think about the ages, if I think about where people are from, sexuality, just life experience, it's so diverse. So I'd like to think, at least at Oh My Dal, we're kind of breaking the bias on gender, but I'd like to think we're doing it on kind of all the different lines you can split us on.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much to be done for representation across the industry in so many different ways. And Justina, what are your thoughts? What does break the bias mean to you?
So I think one of the most important aspects for me is the concept of being an entrepreneur. We are surrounded and I have been surrounded by male entrepreneurs, and I have learned tremendous amount from all of them. But actually taking upon and being able to set up your business, run your business, combine family and professional life, and actually make it work, and showing that regardless of those other responsibilities, which by default, I am a mom, as I mentioned at the beginning, and I run a household as well. Regardless of those additional responsibilities, women are more than capable of being very, very successful in running micro, small, medium, large, and huge enterprises. And I think that's something that I have been really proud of myself, and trying to remind myself to be proud of, that I'm able to make it work. I'm able to make a living. I'm able to support my family in the best possible way whilst following my passion. So taking that, I don't know whether it's stigma or kind of a fear from women that you can do it. You can start up on your own. You don't actually need to have a huge investment to start off with. And you can work on your own passion, fulfilling your own dreams, whilst delivering a great business, great service to people around, other businesses, and being recognized on equal level with anyone else. Like, I'm starting to feel that split between, men are more important versus women are less important, men are better businessmen versus women, that is starting to fade away drastically. And when we look at the food business specifically, the sheer amount of wonderful, wonderful, successful businesses run totally by women is super inspiring and super kind of encouraging to actually get going with that. So I would say that that's probably one of the most important aspects for me in terms of breaking the bias. It doesn't really matter whether you're a woman or a man, or you don't identify yourself with either of those. You can do it.
I love that. And Sylvia, finally, what does break the bias mean to you? Oh, Sylvia, you're on mute.
Sorry, I didn't realize. I think for me, the word bias suggests an implicit inequality, and breaking the bias for me as a business owner, as a founder, as a professional, is about readdressing that balance. So my background is in the events industry, and I started Seduce in 2004 when it was a very different place. The events industry was heavily male dominated, particularly because there's quite a lot of technical aspect to events. There's a strong physical component, a lot of manual work. And it was clear to me when I started in that world that on several occasions I found myself in what felt like male-only spaces. So that would be particularly when you're setting up at an event, or even packing up from an event. Quite quickly it would transform from a business networking environment to a building site. And I felt very aware of being as a female in a minority, to the extent that I've had situations, and I am going back some time, where the women's toilets were closed because there wasn't considered any need to keep them open. However, the male toilets were still open in some venues. So I've had those kind of situations where I've really felt in the minority and almost excluded in that sense. However, I found the events industry has moved on leaps and bounds in the last 15 to 20 years. You now see so many more females as tradespeople, setting up stands, doing the build. So now I feel less conspicuous as a female in those spaces. I think for me, fundamentally, as well as a mother, the events industry is a very tricky place to be when you have a family life, when you have to juggle work with very predictable patterns such as the school run. It's just not possible without the support of your partner or your family and friends. And to me, on a personal level, I rely very heavily on the support of my partner to be able to do the work that I do, to work at the level that I do. And so that for me has translated into a very sort of equal home space as well. So I think, day to day, we're all living examples of how we've broken that bias.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Great answers. I think that a lot of people can relate to so much of what each one of you has said. And if we dive a little bit deeper, what has your experience as a woman in the hospitality industry been like? I know some of you have already alluded to some of your background and the experiences that you've had, but in particular, maybe any exciting opportunities because you're a woman in the industry, or conversely, any challenges that you've come across. Maybe Justina, you can have a think about or tell us any opportunities or challenges that you've experienced specifically as a woman.
Opportunities, funny enough, the fact that I am a mother and that I can feel the pain of many other parents. As I mentioned, I started business and I still run very successfully in the space of children parties. The fact that I'm able to relate to a mother or a father who are calling me asking for help organizing their children's party and literally tearing their hair because they really don't know where to start, they don't know what to do. That ability of my own experience, my own experience gave me the ability to really be on the same level and take them through the process in a very compassionate and understanding way, and it's being greatly appreciated. It has been really fantastic to hear how parents just breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, thank you, like I know it's being taken care of. In terms of challenges, I must say I haven't personally experienced any challenges as a result of being a woman running the business. Back in the day, I was in a tech world. That was a different story. I felt maybe looked upon as like, oh, really? Are you trying to do that? Whereas right now, it's, creating the platters, being able to put my female creativity into it and styling and kind of color patterns. It's all very vibrant. It's all very fresh. It's all very lively. I think it has given me, being a woman in the business, it has given me more opportunities than challenges, I must say. Beside the challenges of running a family, and as Sylvia just mentioned, being able to coordinate drop-offs to London, running through traffic and delivering, dozens of boxes sometimes, which are damn heavy, and then really making it on time to do a school run, to pick kids from school and to be able to serve them fresh dinner every day. That's the challenge, which often male counterparts don't experience. Unfortunately or fortunately, I really don't know, but that's a challenge that has been a challenge.
Yes. And Sylvia, what about from your perspective? You've already talked a little bit about the events industry specifically, but yeah, maybe any positive opportunities that you think have come your way because you're a woman, or challenges as well?
I think the positive opportunities completely outweigh the challenges, actually. So because a lot of our clients are in marketing and branding and advertising, I would say there tend to be more female-centric organizations. So I think when companies contact us, I think there's an initial feeling of we speak the same language. We understand what we would like to achieve. So I think there's a bonding opportunity in having a customer base that is predominantly, I wouldn't say predominantly, but largely female for sort of by and large. And I think definitely there's more opportunities to stand out and for not just differentiation in being a female-owned business, but also to show that we have a like-minded approach, which is so important because relationships are everything.
Yes, absolutely. It's wonderful to hear that that's the experience that you've had.
Mhm.
And Surya, I guess as a woman of color, do you think that this has influenced your experience in the industry, whether positive opportunities or challenges? Oh, Surya, you're on mute. We've done it now, all three. You got the bingo.
Oh, geez.
If I really think about it, if anything, I think being a woman and being of Indian heritage has really been a positive. Especially, I mean, it's an Indian food business, so my background has meant that, at least in my mind, we're doing something that feels very authentic and feels very honest and real. So at no point, I feel lucky to say that it's really been a challenge. It's been definitely a positive. And that kind of extends to the whole thing about being a female in this industry. I completely agree with the others that it actually is it's much more positive than negative, because I think it means that the way you approach the business, the way we deal with our customers, the way we deal with others in our kitchen, if we're sharing the space, the way I see the girls in the team handle certain situations is different sometimes. And not to say that everyone has that skill set, but generally I think it's meant that we've managed to handle ourselves in a much better way, because females tend to have different ways of dealing with certain situations. So it's really been a good thing for us. On the challenges side, I think I can start to now relate to thinking about balancing family life. So I'm not a mother yet, but I'm going to be a mother later this year. So that's obviously something that I'm now trying to plan for. How do you run a business where you can't be there physically 24/7? So that's definitely a challenge. It's obviously not just for the food industry. I think that's for women in general in any industry. So it's really nice and inspiring to hear two other women who've made it work. So I'll have to get some tips after this.
Oh, that's wonderful. And congratulations. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
So yes, you obviously are all amazing, business owners. What do you think can be done to encourage more women into leadership roles? Maybe what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out on that entrepreneurial journey? Sylvia, maybe you can start us off.
So I think for me, in terms of initial advice, I think in life you tend to regret what you don't do more than what you do. So I think the key thing is to see mistakes as a learning opportunity. Firstly, if you've done your research and that you feel there's a gap in the market and that is a space worth pursuing, then once you've satisfied yourself that that gap's big enough and that you can make a success of it, trust your instinct and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you learn so much more from it's how you interpret those errors of judgment that you might be worried about and lack confidence in certain situations. That's really where you grow and develop and shapeshift to the next sort of incarnation of your idea. So you've got to be prepared to adapt and change along the way. So I initially started Seduced because I from a market stall on Portobello Road, I had no food and drink experience. I just wanted to know essentially what flavors people liked. Was this an idea that was going to have legs? And I quickly realized that serving cold products in a cold weather or cold climate is not a good business model year round. So that's what brought me into the corporate events world. And then as a sort of layer on top, I really enjoy branding and marketing and the creative aspect of food and drink. The fact that there's so many flavors you can choose from, colors you can achieve. So I then added a spin on the juices and smoothies by incorporating the branded aspect, and then found my way into the corporate events world that way. So it wasn't the original plan. The original plan was to have a juice bar as a shop, perhaps. And looking back, I'm so pleased I didn't take that route. So you have to keep an open mind and don't be afraid to sort of, as I said, adapt and moderate your plans to fit the feedback you're getting.
Wonderful. And Surya, what about you? What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Yeah, so I tend to agree. When you are thinking about starting a business or giving it a go, it feels like this huge undertaking that you're taking, which you are. But for me, I found that the only way I really got started was by just breaking it down into much smaller steps, things that felt less overwhelming, things that seemed within reach, not too scary, things that I could really visualize myself doing over the next few weeks. So when I first started thinking about creating something like Oh My Dal, I actually just started hosting dinners for free. So it didn't even feel like I was starting a business at that point. And it was more just out of curiosity to know, I love this food. I think, I wonder why I can't get it anywhere else. Does anyone else care? So breaking it down into things like that makes it suddenly makes it a list of things that you can actually do. So I would say, yes, absolutely. Get started if it's something you really care about, something where you feel that the fear of regret is higher than the risk of giving it a go. Absolutely do it. But it doesn't mean you need to have the final packaged product or service or whatever your idea is ready. Make small steps. Even now, we're a year in and we're still evolving at Oh My Dal. We're still learning what works, what doesn't. So don't be afraid to make a start, however small it is. And you do a few small things that seem within your reach, and before you know it, you've actually taken a pretty big step.
I love that. That's great. And Justina, what advice would you give to someone starting out?
I would definitely echo the other lady's feedback. Instinct is paramount, absolutely. Listening to yourself, listening to your gut, and following what you feel may work. I would say that's a starting point, and not overthinking it. I've Up until now, I'm still scared of huge business plans and budgeting for the next 3 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And we just experienced a couple of years ago that everything can just get shuttered in a space of a second, really. And all that planning is going to take a huge amount of energy, huge amount of brain power, and you kind of restrict yourself to a certain extent with the plan rather than following what naturally starts working for the business. So I would definitely say what I mentioned earlier, just go for it and start small. Exactly. My first thing was, okay, I want to give kids lunch boxes. What do I do? Oh, let me set up a website. Oh, there you go. My first order. Okay. I got paid. I could buy things from the payment from the customer. There was no need for a huge investment, and investment come into the business as the business is progressing. So I think also the fact that, especially in the food business, I believe you don't need a large amount of money to start up, because you can go with the orders based on the orders that you're receiving on a daily basis. Obviously, as long as you're not running an actual restaurant and stuff, that's a different story. But you don't need much to start the ball rolling. I would say very important aspect for me was engaging in conversations with my friends, with my family, with other businesses, with people from different industries, but just kind of helping to put certain aspects of planning work, of designing the work into perspective. Even just the fact that you're able to say it out loud to somebody clears your own mind and gives you ideas. I had so many situations where I would start talking about, okay, I'm doing this and this and that. Oh, hold on, I can do this as well. That's how I can improve X. That's how I can improve Y. So that's very important for the peer feedback, for challenging conversations in this area where you have to answer questions, about your profit margins, about your facilities, about your equipment. And by doing that more and more, you come up with new solutions, with new ideas. And the last thing I would say, and I think Sylvia mentioned it as well, listening to your customers, not necessarily just settling for your own vision, your own idea, because that may not necessarily resonate with the wider audience, but being able to listen to customers, being able to be flexible, and actually adjust, tweak your creations, just like I have done dozens and dozens of times. And as a result, I actually came up with new products that became very popular and very successful, just because customer would ask me to do something different, something they wanted to personalize. And it just keeps evolving on a daily basis. And it's never worked. It's never ending progress. One of the girls mentioned that, she started a year ago and she's still evolving. That's never going to finish. You will continue evolving. You will continue changing, as we all are, I bet, on a daily basis, literally on a daily basis. So having that open mind to change, I think it's very important.
Yes, absolutely. Adaptability and flexibility. I think the last 2 years has taught everyone a little bit more of that. Thank you for those answers. So just a reminder to everyone watching, do feel free to pop your questions in the chat box on YouTube or send them to us on social media. The handle is @JustEatForBusiness. We will be doing a quickfire Q&A with our guests at the end of the panel. So back to our discussion. We've talked a lot about, obviously, self-belief and being adaptable and being flexible. I'm curious to see, have any of you experienced moments in your entrepreneurial journey, moments of self-doubt, and how do you overcome that? How do you get over those feelings? Surya, I don't know if you were looking back and forth there. Do you want to start us off?
Of course. Goes without saying. Of course you have moments of self-doubt, and that's throughout, before you start, once you've started, as the business is going, as it's growing, throughout. And it's not always, what I've realized, it's not always just when things are, if you've had an issue or it's been a negative day. Sometimes what you really want is coming your way, and then you go, oh, but are we ready? Are we going to be able to do it? So it's a constant, at least for me. And how do you deal with it? I'm still learning how to deal with it, but I'd broadly say recognizing it, first of all, that it's your self-doubt. And then for me, the initial, you have those days where your heads are in your hand and you're like, how are we gonna do it? But I think for me, whenever I think about things that have happened over the last year or in the journey leading up to my dial up to now, one thing I've learned, there's always a way. There's always a way. You're gonna keep running, so you're gonna find a way. I guess you just go into survival mode, and that really helps me feel much better. Like, we're going to find a way out of it, and you do. But of course, it's your support system as well. So, talking about it, sometimes you don't really feel like talking about it because you're kind of buried in that situation. But definitely talking about it, getting other people's perspective on it, and also just trusting the people around you. So I've realized that the people around me, I'm really lucky. Like the people in my team, when I think there's going to be a hard day or a hard phase, everyone just steps up. So kind of believing in that and realizing that. But yeah, self-doubt is definitely there. The only other thing I would say is that I do think an element of self-doubt is actually a positive thing as well. It keeps you on your toes. It makes you. And I think it also just shows that you still really care. That's ultimately what it is, right? So, it's not a completely negative thing, as long as you don't let it be a barrier and you kind of there's another side to it.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. Sylvia, what about you? You've been in the industry for a long time. Any moments of self-doubt? It almost goes without saying.
Does. I mean, I almost have nothing to add. That was such a great answer. Because I think, you know, self-doubt is part of it is a component of success as well, isn't it? Because you're working through the challenges, your fears about what might not work out, what might go wrong, and then by addressing those concerns and fears, hopefully you're then in a better place as a result and feel more confident actually going into that situation. So I mean, I've had huge moments of self-doubt along the way, and what I have learned in hindsight is ask others for advice and take that on board, but also listen to your inner voice as well, because if you're swept up in a moment of self-doubt and you feel of insecurity, it can be tempting to just to go with a solution that's presented to you, but if it doesn't feel 100% right, it probably isn't. And so listen to your inner voice. Don't leap into something without having that moment to pause and reflect, because ultimately it's you that knows what's best for your business and yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And Justina, I know you got very excited when I asked that question. I could see it on camera. What moments of self-doubt have you gone through, and how have you dealt with those feelings?
Oh, these happen all the time. I echo Surya's answer that it's just never ending, and it comes and goes. There are successful times where you feel on top of the world, and then there are times where you may feel overwhelmed, either with the amount of work or lack of it. You know, in the events industry, in the catering industry, there are periods of silence. January is not necessary. Well, it's dry January for a reason. You know, there are times where it may not be as busy and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, like, how's this month looking like? How's it going to be? What's going to happen? How am I going to go through it? Or am I doing the right thing? Can I build it up to the point where I will finally feel satisfied? And at those times, and those happened, oh my gosh, those happened and they keep happening all the time. I try to just stop and think about what I have actually been able to build, without necessarily any external help, just step by step, one by one, order by order, month by month, customer by customer, and just being able to actually appreciate yourself a little bit and to feel proud of yourself for not giving up when it was tough, for not stopping, for, you know, just going for it and believing in yourself, which sometimes is quite challenging. Opening up to friends and family, I find it quite useful as well, because we very often criticize ourselves much more than we deserve to be criticized. And we are very harsh when it comes to our own assessment. And actually, sometimes either sharing those doubts, sharing those fears with people close to us can give us a different perspective of how our work, how our presence, how, you know, our business is actually making others feel as well, recognizing that what we are building is actually something special, and there's something to feel proud of, and having that different perspective from another person that is, you know, not seeing you crying in the middle of the night thinking, how on earth am I going to fulfill those Just Eat orders, you know, when I have, you know, all the private parties still happening? How is it going to happen? But then actually being able to speak to somebody about it and just stop for a second and say, okay, I'll get extended team for this weekend. I'll get extra support for this weekend. I'll ask grandparents to pick up kids from school, and just kind of narrow the problems down and narrow the doubts down, to very manageable steps.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely sounds like community and support and leaning on one another is pretty crucial for all of us in good times and in bad. And finally, before we go over to audience questions, I have one last question that I've prepared for all of you. What are you most excited about for your business in the near future? What are your future plans that you're thinking, yes, cannot wait to get started on doing that? Surya, I guess you're quite new into the business. You only started it a year ago. You must have quite big plans.
Yeah, there's always lots of plans, at least in my head. So yeah, we're in our second year now. So obviously the focus is to keep growing, and really make sure what we're doing right now is super tight, and we have the capacity to keep building and building. So there's a lot of focus on the operational side, and making sure we're consistent as we grow. But as I mentioned, at the moment, we operate as a kitchen in Shoreditch. So for me, I would love us to be more in front of our customers. So whether that means at some point a storefront or events that bring us in front of our customers, whatever route that takes, that's definitely a goal. Because I think, especially now, the way people experience food or people think about food, it goes so much beyond just the meal that they have. There's so much that people want to know, and to be able to grow a brand and kind of share everything behind it, it would be great to have more interaction with our customers. So that's one thing. And then there's, how do we build on what we've got right now? So right now it's, very much a bowl-based product. I'm constantly asked about recipe books and, keep at home meals. So there's all these different angles. So it's a really exciting time, because I think food brands now have so many layers to them. So it's really now figuring out what we have capacity for, and making sure that each step we're ready for and kind of planning. So yeah, I'm excited.
Very exciting. All those little manageable steps to get to the bigger one.
Exactly.
And Justina, what about you? What are you most excited about?
I think to myself very often that so many fantastic, successful worldwide businesses started off from the garage, started off from the home. And that's where I am. My home kitchen has a beautiful 5-star rating, of course, but I'm working from my own kitchen. I'm working from my own garage. And luckily, I do have enough space to be able to bring the team over. But it has been on the books and on my mind for a long time, scaling the operation and being able to have a space, beautiful commercial space where I can build a team in and actually double, triple, quadruple the amount of orders I'm able to fulfill because of the area and ability to have more people around me. So I think that's very exciting, and with the way business is going right now, it's something that probably needs to come to the forefront of my mind a little bit more often, because even though the kitchen is a good size, having 3-4 people working in a home kitchen preparing orders can get a little bit cramped. So that's the exciting part, to kind of keep monitoring how fast the business is growing, where it's going, which direction is going, and scaling the operations in the sustainable way.
Brilliant. And Sylvia, finally over to you. What are you most excited about in the near future for your business?
I think for me, so just sort of echoing what's been said, really, the opportunity to add different layers to the business keeps it really interesting and diverse, and is sort of natural evolution of how we work. So as I mentioned, Seduced is our bespoke drinks for businesses brand. So for Seduced events, everything we create is custom branded for our clients. So it's a white label service. and we've had the opportunity to work with so many, worldwide recognized customers, but never ever built a brand of our own, because we're always the background. We are that sort of little note in the corner of a label that says supplied by Seduced. And I've always wanted to look at the next step of how to build more brand equity by having our own, creating our own brand. And the pandemic perversely gave me an opportunity to really focus on that, because the events world came to an abrupt end, and everything that relied on social contact came to a halt. So I started offering the juice round as a service to premium retailers, delis, bakeries, and the like in and around London. And we now have over 30 clients who take our drinks weekly. When we deliver, we pick up the empty bottles, clean and refill them. And for me, I think over time, the whole environmental aspect and the ability to make an impact on the huge problem we have with single-use packaging and microplastics, and the fact that we can't recycle our way out of the problem. The more I've read into the frightening statistics around that, the more galvanized I felt to make a difference and make a change. So I'm really excited about the potential to scale the juice round into perhaps a more mainstream environment. I mean, the independent sector is absolutely wonderful. I've built some really great relationships, and it's been so edifying to see store owners really take to what we're trying to do and embrace it. Ultimately, when you're looking at retail, it's so competitive, you do have to scale. So that is the next challenge I'm excited about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, ladies, for all of that. So now we will move on to some audience questions. They've come in through social media and through chat on the YouTube link. So as someone who has started a business, how do you split your focus between running the current business, the day-to-day, and the future growth plans? Obviously quite timely. We've just talked a lot about scaling. So I maybe won't ask everyone this, but obviously if you want to jump in, feel free to jump in. But Sylvia, maybe as we've just heard from you. So how do you split your focus between the day-to-day and the future plans?
That is the hardest thing, I think. It's an excellent question. I wish I had a magic formula to answer that. Essentially, for me, I found that in my mind, I try to aim for a 50-50 balance between ops and sort of sales and growth. When you're in the thick of it at really busy times, it's just not possible. So I think I've tended to change my working pattern so that I'm an early bird now. I get up super early. I try and do a couple of hours in the morning that are really focused on perhaps a more long range remit. And then I obviously start my working day and go straight into the detail of what I've got in front of me at that time. But I think trying to ring fence some time, whatever works for you, whether it's morning or evenings, to look at the bigger picture is essential.
Wonderful. And ladies, Justina or Surya, I don't know if you have anything else to add about that focus split. How do we manage balance?
Yeah, it's very, very challenging. Absolutely very challenging. When you are running day-to-day business, you sometimes really don't have time to think about what's going to be happening in the next few months. So what I'm trying to do is, specifically in this industry, it may be very different for other industries, but as I mentioned earlier, there are quiet times for our industry. So I'm trying to take those quieter times on actually strategizing, reflecting, reviewing things that have happened so far, what worked, what hasn't worked, how we can now take the next step. So I would take, more days in January to think about it than I can take in March, definitely. And I'm using delivery time to do that as well. I spent quite a lot of time in the car, so I take that time rather than blasting out the radio every single time. I try to actually just put the thoughts in the right place and see where can we go next? What do we need to do to go that next step further?
Wonderful.
But it's a challenge for sure.
Absolutely. I think balance seems to be a challenge for a lot of women.
I would absolutely echo both the ladies. That balance between working on what's right in front of you and the operational side versus all your plans and your growth plans is so difficult. And I remember last year, one of the best bits of advice I got was that I needed to step out of the business to be able to work on the business. And that sticks with me. It doesn't mean that I'm always able to do it, but the nature of a food business it's so physical. It involves you being there. So it just makes it even that much harder. It's something I'm still working on. But thankfully, I've got support around me with the team. That means that there are times when I can step away. And again, it's drawing that balance, because the more you step away, there's, how do you stay consistent? How do you make sure things are running the way you want them to run if you're not always going to be physically there? So there is that trade-off. But I really agree with the kind of allocating time, whether it's thinking space or actively working on things that are going to help you grow. But it's difficult. I agree.
Yes, indeed. And I guess the next question that I have coming in here is about role models. Some of you have mentioned a few people who've influenced you in your entrepreneurial journey, but how important are role models to career success? I guess, do you have any, and this is open to all of you ladies, do you have any role models or women that you look up to who have inspired you on your journey? Justina, I don't know if you want to start.
Definitely. The first and the biggest inspiration for me is my mom. I have 4 brothers, so there was 5 of us in the house, and she ran everything like a clockwork. So in the times where I feel tired, and I have 2 children, so really nothing in comparison to what my mom went through. But in the times when I feel tired, when I feel exhausted, when I feel stressed and frustrated, tears flowing, like how on earth am I going to go through the next night, next Christmas, the prep before Christmas, everything is so huge. Every single time I think about my mom, and I'm like, okay, she did it, I can do it. And don't get me wrong, she's very quick to remind me about those challenges that she went through and the sacrifices she made as well. But that's a huge, huge inspiration. And there are quite a lot of businesses run by women that really inspire me. When I look at them and when I see how hard they work, that they start their day sometimes at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go through the orders, and some of them also have to take a school run. Some of them also have huge amount of orders, and somehow they manage. And we may not always be talking to one another, but seeing some of the updates on social media and seeing some of the challenges that other people go through kind of reiterates that, okay, you're not alone. You can go through it. And those ladies that do it, and most of them are ladies actually, it's such an inspiration.
Wonderful. And Sylvia, role models, people who inspire you, women specifically who inspire you? It is International Women's Day after all.
So I wouldn't say I have any like singular or particular role models that I can single out in terms that I'm sort of directly have contact with, that I'm inspired by, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I found podcasts have been really useful to sort of keep me on track, to improve, like just expand my own knowledge and awareness and understanding of what I'm feeling as well at different times in the business journey. So there's one podcast I do listen to, Woman's Hour, I have to say. That's my sort of bedtime listening, should we say. But out of that, there was one speaker at Woman's Hour that I've sort of listened to her podcast a lot more, and it's an American psychologist called Brené Brown, and her site is full of amazing inspirational content. She does a lot of podcasts with her sister, so it's very female led. But the interviews that she does they just make you they just normalize emotion in a way that you realize that everything you're experiencing is intuitive, and you sort of, I find listening to her podcast, you start to engage with what you're feeling instead of perhaps rejecting it or not being able to process what's happened that day. And ultimately, I think just really good to listen to podcasts from a business perspective, but also in terms of personal growth and personal development, because sometimes it is very lonely running a business. You're living a lifestyle that perhaps your immediate peers don't relate to, don't understand, like the day-to-day pace. So taking some time out to just unwind and listen to that kind of content, I find is really good for the soul.
That's great. Yes, I love Brené Brown. Her book, her book Dare to Lead is fantastic. Surya, what about you? Any role models in particular, or women that you do find inspiring on your journey?
So I'd say I'm a kind of a combination of both Justina and Sylvia. So Oh My Dal is predominantly inspired by my mum. As I mentioned, all the food we're sharing, all the recipes are all based on her cooking and her style of cooking. And she was there at the very beginning when we started. So it was just me and her making Oh My Dal kind of start. So she's definitely an inspiration. And as I went along this journey, I found out that all these recipes, well, a lot of them are actually my grandmother's. So the female cooks in my family are definitely an inspiration. But in terms of a role model, I'm probably the same as Sylvia. I can't really pick out one woman or one person that's been that role model for me. But I think I'm more inspired just by businesses where I think that they're doing something that they really care about. It feels credible, it feels authentic, and where they're sharing their kind of unique perspective on that subject or that niche. I find that really inspiring. We're lucky enough to work with two of our suppliers who supply some of the snacks that we sell at Oh My Dal. They're actually both women-led businesses. And it's been really inspiring to see how they've taken their Indian heritage and packaged it up into these products that, just shares their perspective on that part of their culture. So those kind of things really inspire me.
Wonderful. Mums, eh? Where would we be without them? And finally, on the topic of podcasts, that's actually quite apt. Another question did come through. Do you have any tools such as apps or books or podcasts that you would recommend to anyone trying to start their own business? Obviously, Sylvia, you've already mentioned podcasts and Brené Brown. I wonder, Justina, any apps, any tools, anything that you think has helped you on your journey that you would recommend to others?
I would probably go on the tech side, which in current day and age, it's if you don't have a social presence, if you don't have your website looking beautifully, then the chances of you succeeding in business are so much reduced. So Shopify as the platform to run the shop. I run my shop through Shopify. Every product is able to be purchased. So the technology has helped me so much. The website is being optimized constantly within Google, so it's easy for customers to find. On the creative side, I would probably also add Canva to it, which has, again, helped me a lot, especially at the beginning, in terms of producing material that I can then share out and actually build the image that I'm after in terms of portraying my business and portraying my message and portraying my objective. So those two probably would be strong for me. I realize that not every business is running a shop on that level. And as much as I don't have a shop front brick and mortar, I have a shop front, which luckily is working fantastically for me. So that would be my recommendation.
Brilliant. And Surya, do you have any books, podcasts, apps, anything that you have found really helpful in your journey as an entrepreneur that you would recommend to others?
Sure. So a few things come to mind. So at the very start of this journey, before Oh My Thou really existed in the form that it is today, one of the things I was introduced to was the School of Life. And I guess I was at a phase in life where I was kind of deciding, what do I really want to do? Do I really want to go on this journey of trying to see if this food idea that was just in my head really has any legs? And the School of Life for me, I attended 3 of their courses, and I just found those courses to really force me to ask the right questions, and after every session, there were just interesting thoughts that I could walk away with. And I'm convinced that some of that, at least, is what encouraged me and really motivated me to kind of start on this entrepreneurial journey. So School of Life, and I think now they have so many resources, whether it's books, online classes, free resources, but that's one I'd like to mention. And then the other thing is, I think probably last year, I was kind of, always wanting to listen to the next podcast or read the next article or the next whatever it was. But over the last few months, I've really started to appreciate the role of silence and kind of actually not listening to stuff and just having that time to actually just think. Not to say that there are brilliant podcasts out there and apps and so on, but I've almost kind of reduced how much I listen and just have times where it's just silence and I can just think. So I'm probably a lot more selective on what I listen to. But what I found really useful when it came to podcasts and so on was to listen to stuff that had actually nothing to do with the food industry or necessarily setting up a business, but just podcasts where I was exposed to how people are thinking about something and just being inspired by that mindset or that way of thinking or looking at a situation. So I remember I used to really enjoy Exponential View, which is a lot more tech heavy, but every time I listen to that, it just kind of energizes your mind. And somewhere that helped me, at least, when I thought about, the kind of the small operational detail of my dal or whatever. But yeah, so I'd say School of Life, silence, and things that are kind of removed from what you're doing, but just sort of inspire you and energize you.
Wonderful. And Sylvia, I don't want to leave you out. I know you've spoken already about the podcast, but do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No. The only other tip I was going to say is what Justina mentioned, Canva. If you're just playing around with ideas and you've got an image in your mind of what you'd like to create, and you don't want to necessarily go out and spend a lot of money on designers, but just to be able to make your ideas, just that inching forward to that, making them more concrete, have a play around on Canva, because it's so intuitive and easy to use. And somehow by seeing your ideas take form on the page, you'll feel more inspired to then make that, it'll nudge you forward that next step.
Brilliant, wonderful advice from all of you. Well, that is it. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for your questions and for joining us today. I sincerely hope you enjoyed our discussion. And of course, a massive thank you to our guest panelists for joining us, Sylvia Garvin, Justina Novitska, and Surya Gadkari. It's so important we continue to champion women in our industry and shine a light on their journeys beyond just International Women's Day. So I hope everyone found this conversation as inspiring as I did. Happy Women's History Month, and let's all continue breaking the bias. Have a great afternoon, everyone.